How does a moment where nothing clearly happened end up becoming something people can't stop talking about? No confirmation. No obvious interaction. No clear explanation. And yet, it spread everywhere. Not because of what was proven, but because of what people thought they saw. And that's where this gets interesting. Because this wasn't a moment built on facts. It was built on perception. It started in the most ordinary place possible. An airport. Crowded, loud, unpredictable. The kind of environment where everything happens at once. Fans trying to get a glimpse. Cameras flashing from every direction. Staff moving quickly to keep things under control. For most people, moments like this disappear instantly. Nothing lasts long enough to be analyzed. Everything blends into noise. And because of that, even unusual details can go completely unnoticed. At least at first. Because this moment didn't stand out immediately. There was no dramatic scene. No clear interaction. Nothing that made people stop and say, "Wait, what was that?" But somehow, it stayed. A quiet feeling that something about it was slightly different. Not wrong. Just different. And the strange part? No one could explain why. At least not yet. Because the real shift didn't happen in the airport. It happened after. The transition was subtle. Almost invisible. No big moment. No sudden change that forced attention. Just a move from one space into another. From chaos into silence. Inside the plane, everything tightened. The noise disappeared. The distractions faded. The space became smaller, more controlled. And in that kind of environment, something changes. Details that would normally go unnoticed suddenly stand out. There's nowhere for them to hide. Every movement feels more visible. Every glance feels more noticeable. Every second feels heavier. And that's when people started to pay attention. Not to anything obvious, but to something they couldn't fully explain. They were sitting next to each other. Simple. Normal. Nothing unusual. And yet, not completely insignificant. There was no visible effort to create space. No distance. No clear boundary. Just two people sitting side by side like it meant nothing. But in that moment, it didn't feel like nothing. Because once everything else disappears, the smallest details start to matter. And that's when observation turned into curiosity. People began noticing the way they were sitting. The angle of their shoulders. The direction of their gaze. Tiny details that wouldn't normally mean anything. But now, they did. Because there was nothing else to focus on. No distractions. Just stillness. And in that stillness, even the smallest movement felt amplified. That's when people started replaying it. Watching again. Looking closer. Trying to understand why something so simple felt so noticeable. And then came the part that made everything more complicated. Nothing happened. No conversation. No obvious interaction. No clear moment that could confirm anything people were starting to suspect. And somehow, that made it even more intense. Because when something happens, there's clarity. There's a moment you can point to. A clear beginning. A clear end. But when nothing happens, the mind keeps searching. Filling in the blanks. Creating meaning where there might not be any. A glance becomes intentional. A shift becomes meaningful. A completely normal moment starts to feel like part of something bigger. And that's exactly what happened here. The less there was to see, the more people started to imagine. But what made it even more interesting was the contrast between them. Jungkook's presence felt controlled, calm, focused, like he was aware of everything around him, keeping his movements measured and steady. There was something quiet about it. Something that didn't demand attention, but still pulled it in. Taehyung, on the other hand, felt different. More relaxed. More open. Like he wasn't trying to control the moment at all. His presence felt effortless, natural, almost unaffected by everything happening around him. Two completely different energies, sitting in the same space, close enough to be compared, different enough to stand out. And that contrast created something deeper, something harder to define, because it wasn't just about what they were doing. It was about how they felt together. And sometimes, that's even more powerful. But it didn't stop there, because the environment around them began to shift too, not in a loud way, not in a way that interrupted anything, but subtly. Passengers started glancing over. Small shifts in attention. Crew members becoming slightly more aware. Nothing dramatic. Nothing obvious. But enough to suggest that something in the atmosphere had changed. Like people were noticing, without fully understanding what they were noticing. And that quiet awareness added another layer to everything. Because moments like this don't need confirmation to feel real. They just need attention. And once attention is there, everything becomes amplified. But the real turning point didn't happen in that moment. It happened after, when the footage started spreading. Because once something reaches the internet, it changes. Clips began appearing online. Short, unclear, taken from angles that didn't show the full picture. Some moments looked closer than expected. Some frames suggested something that couldn't be confirmed. And that was enough. Because online, clarity isn't what drives attention. Uncertainty does. Almost instantly, people started analyzing everything. Frame by frame. Zooming in. Slowing it down. Looking for details that might explain what they thought they saw. And just as quickly, the internet split. Some people were convinced there was something there. A subtle moment. A hidden interaction. Something small but real. Others saw nothing, calling it coincidence. A trick of angles. A misunderstanding. Both sides were confident. Neither side had proof. And that's exactly what kept the conversation going. Because when there's no clear answer, there's no ending. Rumors started forming. Quiet at first. Then spreading faster. Some suggested there may have been a brief moment of closeness that wasn't fully visible. An interaction hidden between frames. Something the camera almost captured, but didn't. But it's important to be clear. These are just rumors. There's no confirmed evidence. No official statements. No undeniable proof. Just speculation. Driven by perspective. And amplified by curiosity. But here's what made this moment unforgettable. The silence. No one addressed it. No clarification. No explanation. Nothing to confirm or deny what people believed they saw. And instead of ending the conversation, that silence made it stronger. Because silence creates space. Space for imagination. Space for interpretation. Space for stories to grow. And once people start building their own version of a moment, it becomes something bigger than reality. That's when this stopped being just a clip. It became a narrative. The airport became the beginning. The plane became the center. And everything after that became interpretation. People started connecting things that might not have been connected at all. Building meaning out of fragments. Turning seconds into something that felt significant. Because once the idea of something happened exists, it changes everything. Every glance feels intentional. Every movement feels meaningful. Every second feels like part of a bigger story. Even if it isn't. And that's the power of perception. Because perception doesn't need proof. It just needs possibility. And in this case, possibility was enough. And yet, nothing was ever confirmed. No answers. No explanation. Just a moment that people couldn't fully understand. And maybe that's why it stayed. Because the human mind doesn't like uncertainty. It wants answers. It wants clarity. It wants something solid to hold on to. And when it doesn't get that, it creates its own. And sometimes, those created meanings feel just as real as the truth. And that's what this became. Not a confirmed event. Not a proven interaction. But a question. One that people keep going back to. Watching again. Looking closer. Trying to find something they missed. Because deep down, everyone wants to be the one who finally figures it out. Even if there was never anything there to begin with. And maybe that's the real reason this moment still matters. Not because of what happened, but because of what people believe might have happened. Because in the end, nothing clearly happened. And yet, it felt like something did. And sometimes, that feeling is more powerful than any fact.